This video is brought to you by Vibrant Ingredients, a trusted partner delivering natural ingredients for food and beverage innovation. Hello, I'm Doug Peckinpah, Director of Content Strategy at BNP Media and leader of the Prepared Foods editorial team. And today I'm joined by Nagendra Rangavajla. He currently works with JPG Resources, the product development team, and has an R&D background that includes work at Nestle, Abbott, and Califia Farms, along with his position as an adjunct professor at Ohio State University. Welcome to the show, Nagendra.
Good morning. Thank you, Doug.
In part one of this two-part series, we discussed some of the key trends impacting healthy, functional beverage development today, with a strong focus on fiber opportunities. I encourage you to go back to part one if you haven't seen that portion first, because you can get a great foundation for the conversation that we're going to continue now in the second part, where we're going to dig into some ingredient and formulation strategies for on-target beverage formats. We've seen that consumers respond favorably to using beverages as a vehicle for nutritional fortification. It seems like we can get away with a lot more in a beverage than we can in some other product formats, which is a great opportunity for folks who are developing products for specific health and nutrition need states. Nagendra, what are some of the most commonly used fiber ingredients when we're thinking about fortification and enhancement for beverages these days?
So when formulating beverages, developers historically look for high water solubility, low viscosity, and clarity. Essentially, delivering versatility. So you don't want fiber to define your beverages, but you're able to define the beverage using fiber as an ingredient. So based on that criteria, based on the success criteria. There are three types of fibers that the developers tend to focus in on, right? So these are soluble corn fiber resistant maltodextrins. These are highly stable. They are highly stable under pasteurization or high acid, low acid. So these are proven to be very good with formulation in multiple formats, multiple product types, with very little baseline flavor, for example. But off late, some of the concern, if you will, that we're starting to see is that from a purist clean label standpoint, these are considered to be processed ingredients and are synthetic in some ways, right? These are synthetic inputs because they're essentially the moieties are reconstructed to be the fibers that they are. Um, then the second class of them are, the inulins and fructooligosaccharides that are quite popular that have similar properties in terms of viscosity, not necessarily inulin delivers a little more viscosity, but in terms of clean and not not contributing to baseline flavor of the products, some of those requirements. So these are inulins and fructooligosaccharides are sourced commonly from chicory root or agave, for example. Um, they also contribute to mild sweetness and oftentimes bit of texturizing mouthfeel, especially if you use inulin. Again, the drawback that we're seeing here, that it has a low gastrointestinal tolerance. So that is people um, have faced issues by taking some of these ingredients in terms of your GI distress, for example, or lots of those afflictions, right? Um, Especially when you take it more than 5 grams. So when you think of it in the context of fiber maxing, where you want to go add more fiber to your daily routine, you want to go more than 5 grams in a beverage, but maybe up to 10 grams, for example, to help with fiber maxing. So in those situations, inulin fructooligosaccharides tend to have some tolerance issues that have been demonstrated. The more emerging soluble fibers of late have been these plant fibers, where this is sort of a cutting edge tier of upcycled agricultural plant fibers, if you will. Some of them are characterized by platforms. Essentially, these fibers are derived from the larger, much bigger molecular weight plant fibers and have been broken down, and they're essentially engineered to be colorless, tasteless, and odorless. But they're smaller molecules, but offering maximum prebiotic efficacy with very little gastrointestinal interference. There's been quite a bit of momentum in this emerging soluble short chain fibers from plant fiber space. That we are seeing a lot of growth in the recent years.
You
So I
know,
think those are the
yeah.
three main ones that we're beginning to see here, for as tools for the developers.
Yeah, when you look at the range of different ingredient opportunities that exist, then we want to connect the dots to beverage formats. You talk about, the ability for the consumer to tolerate certain levels and types of fiber ingredients. But beverages themselves have their own limitations in terms of what they can accommodate in terms of different ingredient matrices that are involved. When you start digging into specific areas like targeted nutrition for gut health and delivering protein and delivering fiber. And people are expecting to receive these health benefits in a wide variety of beverages. It's not just the nutritional smoothie these days. So when you start to see, product developers are expanding this range of beverage types, what are some of the different beverage formats that you think are most interesting or the best suited to fiber fortification these days?
Yeah, so good question. So, we're seeing evolution on ready to mix beverages, for example. AG1's, has been a good story of it in terms of how you can pack fiber in a stick pack and deliver the active wellness, right? So, the RTMs also tend to be a good vehicle for delivering fiber because, as opposed to liquids where you're building viscosity, stability considerations are critical in that. In RTMs, you avoid some of the liquid interactions and liquid processing related issues with the fibers. So that's why RTMs are taking center stage. Plus, consumers have begun this ritualistic process of using fibers or fiber containing RTM products, where in the morning you're waking up, like your ritual of making a coffee. There's a ritual that's forming where you want to mix the fiber into a cup of water, and it's great tasting, easy to drink fiber. You're able to gulp it down for your active wellness, right? So there's a dual benefit of RTMs. One, the rituals that people are forming, and two, that you don't have to worry about liquid processing affecting the fiber or textural quality of the product. So that's
Mm.
one. Obviously, plant-based protein and dairy shakes continue to be the vehicle for delivering more and more fiber because, from a volume standpoint, for people exposure, some of the drinks, if you do not get the fiber into those products, you're not going to fiber max, or you're going to lose out on the trend. So we're seeing a lot of movement in the space. With the sodas, with dairy beverages, shakes, adding more and more fiber, but also able to manage the thickness or opacity that has been introduced by the fiber. So we're seeing lots of formulations that are coming through these days, so which is encouraging. We're also seeing the cold brews or coffees now because they're also part of ritual. There's an energy component to it, and then fiber fits really well because a fiber that's tasteless, textureless, a combination of fiber and coffee is being seen as a really nice nice marriage, if you will, right? So again, you don't have to create a new habit. It's already an existing habit, existing ritual of drinking coffee, but adding these tasteless, odorless, and textureless fibers has become a win-win situation in that context. We're also seeing hydration, sparkling waters. We talked about sparkling waters and sparkling tonics, infused with soluble and low viscosity fibers. Um, again, the soda craze, soda again is a ritual. So they're combining a ritual with what you need to allow for fiber maxing and getting the right amount of fiber in the body. So there are quite few meaningful innovations, meaningful formats that have been repurposed, if you will, to deliver a good source of fiber. I really like it because this trend being an important trend, and oftentimes not taking enough fiber is considered as hazardous as smoking sometimes, right? So
Mhm.
given that health consequence of not taking enough fiber, the more formats we as developers are able to deliver to the consumers, the more the solve that we can bring in terms of fiber gap.
Yeah, it's a lot of information sometimes for a shopper walking through the store, going through the beverage case to take in. They have these ideas about what's best for their health, and they've got some ideas about what it takes to get there. But what the product developer chooses to put on the pack in terms of attracting attention, I think is always very interesting to see how it builds that engagement with the shopper in the store at that moment of purchase. I mean, we think about things like, gut health and immunity, and these words that we can use to call attention to the functions that we're trying to achieve within the beverage. That's it's always an opportunity, I think, for a new connection. Protein and fiber, these make sense to consumers. They understand it. When beginning an R&D project for, say, a fiber fortified beverage line, what are some other nutritional ingredients, either established or emerging, that you think merit call out to a higher degree within marketing materials, on labeling, for product developers to capture consumer attention? It's getting increasingly crowded and competitive in this marketplace. So, what can a product developer do to stand out?
The way a traditional approach to product development is, what are the we think about what are the target vectors, right? Where do we want to go with this product? So is it for sports and active performance? Is it for metabolic wellness? Is it for example, cognitive support, or beauty from within? So there are multiples of those vectors, or platforms that we would deliver the products. So as you already pointed out, if it is sports, yeah, can I combine with protein maybe, or creatine, or electrolytes, right? If it is for metabolic wellness, oftentimes minor micronutrients like chromium for metabolic wellness, or polyphenols, perhaps, right? If it is for cognitive support or focus, caffeine, L-theanine, old ingredient, but there's a lot of clinical evidence behind it. Or nootropics, for example, adaptogens come into play when you design a product for cognitive support. Or beauty and wellness, obvious choices, right? Collagen, or oral hyaluronic acid, or vitamin C. So there's so many of those ingredients. So I think all these ingredients fit well with fiber as a matrix, particularly if the fiber is tasteless, odorless, textureless, as we spoke about, right? But it depends on what vectors we're going to go. But these are the ones that are trending today: the metabolic, sports, cognitive, beauty from within. So some of the ingredients I see are pretty consistent with those trends.
Some fantastic ideas and opportunities there. As we think about the potential within this area of product development, which is just so exciting right now. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nagendra, and for sharing these great insights.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, Doug.
This video is brought to you by Vibrant Ingredients, a trusted partner delivering natural ingredients for food and beverage innovation.